committee held hearings on the troubles that rural hospitals are facing in the United States before the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill. They've been facing difficulties in rural America for a number of years now. And the bill, the One Big Beautiful Bill, contained a rural health transformation program, which I would just like to ask you to comment on. This is the program which allocated $50 billion over the next 5 years to our rural community hospitals in the United States to help them deal with some of the financial crises that they are facing and transition to more stability. Could you comment on that program that is in the One Big Beautiful Bill?
Yeah, Senator, one of President Trump's campaign promises and one of the principal preoccupations, not only of Republican senators when I did my confirmation hearing, but also almost equally among Democratic senators, was crisis in rural health. We've had 120 rural hospitals closed over the past 10 years. These institutions are not just delivering health access to rural Americans, but they are economic centers, they are cultural centers for those communities. They are often the largest employer. They are the highest paying jobs, and they are the centerpiece for those communities. So when they die, the communities collapse. And President Trump promised to do something about that, and he has delivered on that promise. Right now, we spend about 6% of Medicaid funding is sent to rural hospitals, a very, very tiny slice, and that's one of the reasons they're in trouble. President Trump has now allocated through the One Big Beautiful Bill $50 billion, so $10 billion a year over the next 5 years. What we give to rural hospitals, that 6% represents $19 billion a year. So we're increasing that by $10 billion. So we're infusing more than 50% increase in the amount of money that is going to rural communities over the next 5 years. There's never been anything like that in history. It is the biggest investment, and it should stem this hemorrhage.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your giving clarity to that, because it is frustrating to see these continuous allegations that the difficulties that our rural hospitals are facing all were created in the last few months when we passed a bill, when we've been holding hearings in this committee about these problems. And in the bill that we passed, we gave a $50 billion boost to, as you indicated, increase by 50% the federal support for our community rural hospitals in the United States. And I think that the hospital owners understand that. They recognize this support. In fact, they are coming they're coming together very carefully with Dr. Oz to work on the rollout of this program so that we can see this boost and this support that is coming. Just another one of the disagreements we have about what really was in the One Big Beautiful Bill. So I appreciate you commenting on that. In the last minute and 10 seconds that I have with you, could you just quickly talk once again about the broad issue of making America healthy again in terms of our aim to change the healthcare system's focus from a reactive symptom management model to one that focuses on lifestyle choices and the root causes of chronic disease?
Yes, Senator, this morning I got the latest numbers from CDC that 76.4% of Americans now have a chronic disease. This is stunning. When my uncle was president, it was 11%. 1950 was 3%. Today it's 76.4%. 8 out of 10 of our kids cannot qualify for military service. This is a national security issue. When my uncle was president, we spent zero on chronic disease. Today, we spend $1.3 trillion. It's the biggest cause, and it's increasing. And all of the arguments that Republicans and Democrats have about single-payer, Obamacare, or the various ways to allocate the health dollars, they're all like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. If we don't end this chronic disease, we are the sickest country in the world. That's why we have to fire people at CDC. They did not do their job. This was their job to keep us healthy.
Thank you.
And I need to fire some of those people to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I have to cut myself off to make sure I keep to this time frame too. Senator White.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I've made it clear. I think that Secretary Kennedy is dead set on making it harder for children to get vaccines and that kids are going to die because of it. And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to put in the record today an op-ed written by Susan Monarez, who was fired by Mr. Kennedy.
Without objection.
So what we know, and Dr. Monarez, was approved by Republicans. She wrote an op-ed today in the Wall Street Journal, which I've just put in the record, and I quote her. She said, "I was told to pre-approve the recommendations of a vaccine advisory panel newly filled with people who have publicly expressed anti-vaccine rhetoric." So, it's not some liberal philosopher or something. This is the CDC director who tells the Wall Street Journal, which is not exactly interested in progressive, theories and the like, that she was told to pre-approve the recommendations of a vaccine advisory panel filled with people who've publicly expressed anti-vaccine rhetoric. So, my first question, Mr. Secretary, is, did you, in fact, do what Director Monarez said you did, which is tell her to just go along with vaccine recommendations, even if she didn't think such recommendations aligned with scientific evidence?
No, I did not.
That's a yes or no. So you have an opportunity to call her a liar if you say that you didn't do it, but I'd like to see you respond to this.
No, I did not say that to her. And I never had a private meeting with her. So there are witnesses to every meeting that we have, and all those witnesses will say, I never said that.
So she's lying today to the American people in the Wall Street Journal?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's talk now about what's coming up, because I've made it clear what I've thought about the 203, days with my colleague, Senator Also Brooks. In 2 weeks, CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices will meet to make decisions about critical vaccines that protect us against hepatitis B, measles, and more. The committee's got a profound impact on vaccine access, but these aren't ordinary meetings. You stack the deck to ensure the panel bends to your views. In June, you fired all 17 committee members who are respected scientists and doctors. You replaced them with non-experts, vaccine skeptics, and conspiracy theorists. As a result, this critical advisory panel has lost scientific credibility. After years, colleagues, we spend so much time not looking at this as Democrats and Republicans, but it's good science and scientific credibility. And now the American Academy of Pediatrics has warned that the committee is being politicized at the expense of children's health. American Academy of Pediatrics, you think they're lying too?
I think the American Academy of Pediatrics is gravely conflicted. They get, their biggest contributors are the 4 largest vaccine makers. They run a journal, Pediatrics, which they make a lot of money on, that is completely dependent on pharmaceutical companies. So I wouldn't put a big stake in what they say that benefits pharmaceutical interests. Senator, I didn't politicize ASAP, I depoliticized it. The Congress has been investigating ASAP.
All over the country, Mr. Secretary, scientists and doctors are saying otherwise. They're all wrong too. They're all lying, according to you.
The scientists and doctors are supporting me all over the country. There is division on opinion.
I don't get letters from thousands of people who are not political saying that this set of changes is going to damage American healthcare, and particularly these healthcare agencies, for decades to come. I don't get any letters from people saying,
it
this
may
is going to
be
make a big difference forever.
And maybe you're listening to a selective group of people.
You get me.
And I will.
Fine.
I will tell you what, Senator. I will put my mailbag against your mailbag any day of the week.
30 seconds. Dangerous respiratory viruses like RSV are on the agenda for the next advisory meeting. Countless parents have been awakened in the dead of night by a wheezing kid gasping for air, forced to rush their little one to the ER. There's no worse heart-wrenching fear. The RSV vaccine offers these kids protection against the worst effects of the virus. But now it looks like you're on a crusade to make infants and babies more vulnerable to the terrible illness. That's what we're doing with the COVID change.
Mr. Secretary.
I've said
The position is indefensible. I think it's possible.
Congress has been investigating that committee for 23 years because it is pervaded with conflicts of interest. What we did is we got rid of the conflicts of interest. We depoliticized it and put great scientists on it from a very diverse group.
Let me close with
very pro-vaccine.
Let me close with this because, like Senator Crapo, I'm a few seconds over. I don't think, Mr. Secretary, this is about you and me. This is about kids being pushed in harm's way by reckless and repeated decisions to get scientists and doctors out of the way and allow conspiracy theories to dictate this country's health policy. I don't see any evidence that you have any regrets about anything you've done or plans to change it. And my last comment is, I hope that you will tell the American people how many preventable child deaths are an acceptable sacrifice for enacting an agenda that I think is fundamentally cruel and defies common sense. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do I get a reply? Or Senator, you've sat in that chair for how long? 20, 25 years, while the chronic disease in our children went up to 76%. And you said nothing. You never asked the question, why it's happening? Why is this happening? Today, for the first time in 20 years, we've learned that infant mortality has increased in our country. It's not because I came in here. It's because of what happened during the Biden administration that we're going to end.
I'm going to let Senator Wyden respond briefly to that, and then we're not going to go over like we just did.
This committee on a bipartisan basis. Colleagues, my cabinet secretary says that we have no interest in chronic care. Mr. Secretary,
Mr. Chairman, could we have regular order,
we
please?
are in the process of turning around the Medicare program with the chronic care bill that Chairman Hatch, the leading chairman in this committee, worked on a bipartisan basis.
All right, we're going to proceed, and I just want the rest of the members to know, I gave Senator Wyden as ranking member some leeway there, but we're going to stick to the 5 minutes. Senator Grassley.
First of all, thank you. I have asked HH secretaries in the past to fully utilize the Rural Community Hospital Demonstration Program under Medicare. The program has been underutilized. In May, the CMS filled the open slots. Thanks to your agency's work, there's been 10 more rural hospitals in the program. It's important that the federal government uses every tool possible to help rural hospitals, and thank you for making that possible. Now to my questions. Back in January, during your confirmation hearing, you told me that you agreed to leave farming regulations to the Department of Agriculture and EPA. Do you think that any comments you have made since your confirmation on topics dealing with agriculture are consistent with what you said in January, that USDA and EPA ought to be regulating farming, and that the Department of Health and Human Services should not seek to regulate farms, the tools they use, or the markets that they sell into?
Yes, Senator, we are working very, very closely with Brooke Rollins and with the agricultural community. We've met with over 140 farm interests over the past 3 months to incorporate them to make sure that the MAHA agenda is consistent with their agenda. We are producing the best food in America, that we're protecting our soils and our soil microbiome, and that we're protecting all kinds of farmers, including those who want to transition to regenerative agriculture. We're consulting every stakeholder in the farm community in everything that we do.
I just raised the question because farmers in my state have been concerned about some of the things you're saying.
Senator, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Some of the farmers in my state have been raising questions about some of the things that they think you said, whether it was out of context or not. I just thought I'd raise this question so that you would keep by what you told us back in January at your confirmation hearing. Now, Senator Durbin and I have a bipartisan bill that requires price disclosures on TV ads. Price transparency is important in drug advertisement. I know that President Trump, Vice President Vance, and you are all supportive of this effort. When can I expect action from this administration on requiring drug companies to publish the price of drugs in their TV ads? And just in case you would tell me that you don't think you have that authority, can you help Senator Durbin and I on our bill so that we can ensure that you have legal authority to require price disclosure?
Senator, I think it would be good for us to talk about this offline. We are working on this in our agency, and I'm happy to give you the details of what we're doing.
Okay. I've got a question here on transplant. Senator Kennedy and I have been working it, or Senator Wyden and I have been working on this. For nearly 2 decades, I've engaged in a bipartisan oversight of the organ transplant system. RISA has developed a tool to combat transplant line skipping. I hope that you can take steps to make sure that these steps are being taken by HHS and ERISA to curb transplant line skipping. On July the 2nd, Senator Wyden and I wrote you a letter highlighting cases of OPOs in Mississippi and Kentucky. In each of these cases, OPO allegedly tried to harvest organs from patients still showing signs of life.
All right, we're going to say...
Especially among young people, yes or no? Are you aware that he said that?
I wasn't aware he said it, but I think I agree with it.
You agree with it? It's not true. It wasn't true when he said it. It is not true when you said it. Secretary Kennedy, later this month, your new panel will meet to consider changing vaccine recommendations for American children. In addition to the COVID-19 vaccines, they are set to review recommendations for the hepatitis B vaccine, for measles, for mumps, for rubella and varicella vaccine, and the RSV vaccine. These are common back-to-school vaccinations for children all over the industrialized world. If you change that, you owe parents in Colorado and across the country the benefit of some transparency, I think. If your panel recommends changing the vaccine schedule for children, do you anticipate that fewer children will receive these common vaccinations, yes or no?
What I would say, Senator...
The obvious answer is yes. Should parents and schools of Colorado be prepared for more measles outbreaks as a result of that, Mr. Secretary?
Senator,
how about more mumps outbreaks?
I do not anticipate a change in the MMR vaccine. ACIP is an independent panel, so...
Well, it's a panel you just put those folks on. Far from what you said, they're people with ideas that are completely outside the mainstream.
You mean out of the pharmaceutical paradigm?
Let me just say, Mr. Secretary, all these vaccines that we're talking about today are free and accessible to parents today in America who have the freedom to be able to make that choice for their children. Will that be true after your hand-picked panel makes their judgments about these vaccines?
I think that parents should be free to...
I know you said that before. I do too.
To make their own choices.
So will they be just as free after these?
I assume they will be.
I will hold you to that, Secretary Kennedy. Because this is not a podcast. It is the American people's health that's on the line here. This is the last thing, by the way, our parents need when their kids are going back to school, is to have the kind of confusion and expense and scarcity that you're creating as a result of your ideology. I think it's critical for you to share the evidence that this panel will rely on, will you give the American people 6 months or 6 weeks in advance the record that they're going to rely on to make these decisions? Will you make it transparent for the American people?
All the evidence is transparent.
Will you make it in advance transparent for the American people so they can comment on it?
All the evidence is transparent for the first time in history, and you were never there complaining when the pharmaceutical companies were picking those people and then running their products through with no safety testing.
You can characterize it any way you want. I quoted them today. What I said was accurate. What you said were lies. You described people moving the Titanic.
Are you saying that the mRNA vaccine has never been associated with myocarditis or pericarditis in teenagers? Is that what you're trying to tell us?
I am simply trying to say that the people that you have put on that panel, after firing the entire...
You're evading the question.
No, I'm asking the questions here.
You're evading that question.
I'm asking the questions,
I
Mr.
asked you
Kennedy.
a question.
I'm asking the questions for Mr. Kennedy on behalf of parents and schools and teachers all over the United States of America who deserve so much better than your leadership. That's what this conversation is about, Mr. Chairman.
Senator, they deserve the truth, and that's what we're going to give them for the first time in the history of that agency.
Senator Cassidy.
Thank you. I'll try and restore a little calm here. And I'm approaching this as a doctor, not as a senator. I am concerned about children's health, seniors' health, all of our health. And I applaud you for joining the president in a call for radical transparency. Thank you for that. I said yesterday, I believe it, that President Trump deserves a Nobel Prize for Operation Warp Speed. If he had been President Obama, he would have gotten it. But because of Operation Warp
He
Speed,
deserves an
forcing the
award
federal
that
government to
he's
come to a vaccine
denying
development
right
within
now.
10 months when others said it couldn't be done.
He doesn't want
We
credit for
save
Operation
millions of
Warp
lives
Speed
globally,
anymore.
trillions of dollars, we reopen
Okay.
economies, incredible accomplishment. Mr. Secretary, do you agree with me that the president deserves a Nobel Prize for Operation Warp Speed?
Yeah, absolutely, Senator.
So let me ask you, but you just told Senator Bennett that the COVID vaccine killed more people than COVID.
Please,
That was a statement.
I did not say that.
Okay, then let me ask, because you also...
Senator, I just want to make clear, I did not say that.
We'll check the record. That's a question of fact. You also said that you were also, as lead attorney for the Children's Health Defense, you engaged in multiple lawsuits attempting to restrict access to the COVID vaccine. Again, it surprises me that you think so highly of Operation Warp Speed when, as an attorney, you attempted to restrict access. Let me ask.
I'm happy to explain why.
I have 3 minutes and 30 seconds left. It also surprises me because you've canceled, or HHS did, but apparently under your direction, $500 million in contracts using the mRNA vaccine platform that was critical to Operation Warp Speed. Again, an accomplishment that I think President Trump should get a Nobel Prize for. You canceled $500 million in contracts. Now, I grew up in a middle-class family, so $500 million seems just to cancel. It seems like an incredible waste of money. But it also seems like a commentary upon what the president was attempting, what the president did in Operation Warp Speed, which is to create a platform by which to create vaccines. So this just seems inconsistent that you would agree with me the president deserves a tremendous amount of credit for this.
Is this a question, Senator Cassidy, or is this a speech that you don't want me to answer? Because I want to answer that question.
Please,
If it's a question.
But be tight, please.
First of all, the reason that Operation Warp Speed was genius is it did something nobody had ever been done. I don't think any president but President Trump could do it. It got the vaccine to market that was perfectly matched to the virus at that time when it was badly needed, because there was low natural immunity and there were people getting very badly injured by COVID. And then, but it was also brought in therapeutics like hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin and protocols for treatments, and there were no mandates. And then
Okay, I have another question, so please.
That's when I began litigating against President Biden's mandates. Now,
I'm sorry, let me go on because
In terms
you've
of
covered
me
the mandate
canceling those
before.
contracts,
I have limited time, Mr. Secretary, I'm sorry. You've called for, and rightly so, that we should restrict participation in agencies for those with conflict of interest. I would like to submit for the record a evaluation of the conflict of interest of those who are on the ACIP and the Vaccines and Related Biologic Products Advisory Board. It was not 97% as alleged, rather it was 6.9%, and it was 1.2%, I think, for the other panel.
Without objection.
Now, I am concerned, though, because many of those whom you have nominated for the ACIP board, excuse me,
you have the facts
excuse me,
wrong in there.
excuse me, can I have my time back?
Yes.
Yeah. What I am concerned about is that many of those whom you've nominated for ACIP have received revenue as serving as expert witnesses for plaintiffs' attorneys suing vaccine makers. Now, one of my colleagues in another setting alleged that you seem more interested in settlements than science. If we put people who are paid witnesses for people suing vaccines, that actually seems like a conflict of interest. Real quickly, do you agree with that?
No, I don't. It may be a bias, and that bias, if disclosed, is okay. But it's not a financial. It's not a financial conflict of interest. It's not a financial.
Let me finish up. Let me finish up. You also told Senator Wyden at the outset that you didn't want to take vaccines away from people. And as I conclude, I would like to say this. Because of the conflicting recommendations made about COVID, this is from Eric Erickson, good conservative out of Atlanta, Georgia, occasionally gives me help. My wife has stage 4 lung cancer. She is one of the people the COVID vaccine actually helps. Thanks to the current mess at HHS, CVS is unable to get her vaccine. Secondly, an email from a physician friend of mine. Hey, Bill, I'm not even sure what I'm asking, but we're all confused and concerned about who can get the COVID vaccine. We are having our attorney try and render an opinion, but there's no firm guidance and concerned about liability if vaccines are given to a patient who requests it, but not on the current CDC list. Pharmacists are requiring a prescription now even for patients over 65, creating a huge headache. I submit these for the record.
Without objection.
I would say effectively we're denying people vaccine.
Senator Cantwell.
You're wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Following up on that same line as Senator Cassidy, because that's exactly science-based states in the country. That is percentage of scientists per capita. And at your confirmation hearing, we asked about this, whether you would follow science. You've made a statement here today in your testimony that you would follow science, and yet you're not following science, and that's what Senator Cassidy's question was. It's a simple yes or no answer. Do you think the president deserves to get a prize for warp speed in the mRNA technology that saved so many lives? And you won't answer that question.
I answered it.
No, you're saying that there are problems with what was interpreted. You could say yes. You should say
I said the president deserves a Nobel Prize, but our mRNA vaccines that we're working on, the ones that we canceled, which are for upper respiratory infections alone,
you canceled $500 million of research because the mRNA technology is about continuing the research to be ready for the next flu, influenza, the next pandemic, and you have to do the research.
I'm happy to have a detailed discussion with you about it. You're so wrong on your facts.
You're interrupting me, and sir, you're a charlatan. That's what you are. You're the ones who conflate chronic disease with the need for vaccines. The history on vaccines is very clear. This is the 20th century. That's how many people had vaccines and had illnesses. This is the 21st century. This is the decrease, 99% down to 100%. This is what was delivered with vaccines. And you don't want to support that. You don't want to support that evidence. So yes, the governors of the West, Washington, Oregon, and California, will take up the efficacy of science. Yes, the University of Washington will deliver the science that America will depend on, because you don't want to depend on it. And his own Surgeon General of the Trump administration said over 2 million lives were saved because of the mRNA technology, and you don't want to continue that. You don't want to continue that technology. So what country is going to now take up that technology lead? What country is going to do that? Leaving us more vulnerable to some other country, keeping the advantage on having the best technology. So I'm telling you, I represent a state that's about technology. I have two other quick questions for you.
These questions are statements, because I can answer that question if it's actually a question.
Do you believe in having the ACA and the support for the ACA that is about to expire? Do you believe in doing something about that?
In terms of the enhanced premium tax credits,
Yes.
the Democrats had two chances to make them permanent, and they didn't. And they didn't
We're
for
the
a
ones
reason.
we're the ones who delivered it. So I'm just
They
asking
didn't
yes
for a
or no,
reason.
do you want to do something about this? Yes.
I want to fix the system, and that's what we're doing. Fixing systematically to make premiums lower. That's what President Trump wants to do.
Do you think the women on the steps of the Capitol were a hoax yesterday?
I don't know about any women on the steps of the Capitol.
The women who were talking about Epstein. Do you think they were a hoax yesterday?
Do I think they were
Do you think they were perpetrating a hoax yesterday?
perpetuating a hoax?
Yeah.
I have no idea what they were saying. This is the first time hearing about it.
You're hearing about the women on the Capitol steps saying that they believe that the Epstein information should be made public. That's the first you're hearing about it. What I'm saying is you're perpetrating hoaxes. You, as this Secretary of Health, so you're undermining the whole healthcare delivery system, and you keep trying to point to chronic disease, but you're not putting solutions on the table to cover more Americans, and you're taking away the science and technology that has made us the leader that has saved, according to the first Trump administration Surgeon General, millions of lives, and you don't want to keep that going. So no, I don't support your continued efforts as Secretary, and I definitely think that our colleagues need to rally around science. If you want the Northwest to continue to lead on all innovation and all healthy people, okay, we'll do that. But it's a sad statement for the rest of America and America's leadership on technology. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Warner.
Mr. Secretary, I agree with a lot of my colleagues' statement. I actually had hoped I didn't support you. I thought taking on chronic illnesses was going to be important. I've got two kids, as we discussed when we met, that have chronic illnesses. I'm not sure that the focus on red dye and seed oils are going to fully solve that problem.
Of course they won't.
I would say this, that seems where your emphasis is. I want to go back to just, again, some basic facts. Do you accept the fact that 1 million Americans died from COVID?
I don't know how many died.
You're the Secretary of Health and Human Services. You don't have any idea how many Americans died from COVID?
I don't think anybody knows that because there was so much data chaos coming out of the CDC, and there was perverse incentives. And these are modeled
You don't know the answer of how many Americans died from COVID. This is the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Do you think the vaccine did anything to prevent additional deaths?
Again, I would like to see the data and talk about the data.
You have had this job for 8 months, and you don't know the data about whether the vaccine saved
and that's
lives?
the problem is that they didn't have the data. The data by the Biden administration absolutely dismal.
So who is politicizing? You're saying the Biden administration politicized all the data? Go back to what Cantwell just said. Go to the Trump Surgeon General.
They fired Dr. Grunt. They fired all the people who questioned the orthodoxy. They fired Dr. Gruber, Dr. Cowles.
Mr. Chairman, the Secretary of Health and Human Services doesn't no matter how many Americans died from COVID. Doesn't know if the vaccine helped prevent any deaths. And you are sitting as Secretary of Health and Human Services. How can you be that ignorant? I remember when we went through the hearing with you, I asked you about community health centers. You didn't know what role they played. I've been visiting community. I'm glad you've got to one. I think in April. I tell you what I hear on community health centers, they are terrified. With all due respect to my good friend, the chairman, of the big awful bill. Because they are going to lose health care across the board. They already live in food deserts. They can't get to a nutritionist because Medicaid doesn't do enough reimbursement. If you're going to want Americans to get healthier, Should they have access to nutritionists? Should they have access to good science about healthy food?
Absolutely.
Well, then, how is that going to happen with the Medicaid cuts that are taking place?
There are no cuts to Medicaid.
Sir, that is an absurd. There's not a single, some of my Republican colleagues, but there's not a single study that does not, I can tell you, I was in Franklin, Virginia a couple days ago. The rural hospital is going to close. The hospital system was so afraid they wouldn't even let me have the meeting there. But that rural hospital is going to close. And they are looking for where those folks are going to go. I mean, you're supposed to be doing healthcare policy, not being the doctor in residence for all of America. I hope I can just say, hey, I'm still going to trust my doctor rather than your health advice. And obviously, Tom Cotton's going to, who knows who he's going to trust. But let me go back to policy for a couple, so maybe we'll lower the temperature a little bit. I got a bipartisan bill that would be a systemic fix, not a vote-buying mechanism when Medicaid's getting cut, what was put in on the rural hospitals. One of the things we could do, Mr. Secretary, is make sure that the folks who work in rural hospitals get an 80% reimbursement of what folks get in more urban centers. Would you support that legislation?
Are you talking about the area wage index?
I'm talking about the area wage index and moving that up to 80%. So there is actually ability to get rural providers.
President Trump supports that, and we support.
Do you support? You support. Good. So you will work with us to get that passed.
Yes.
That will increase costs on both Medicaid and Medicare. So you are committed to that. I appreciate that. What about Senator Wyden and I've got a bill because across America,
What about what?
hospitals are shutting down on their OBGYN services. Try to have a baby. I don't know about all my other friend states, but in Southside Virginia, you can't find a hospital. Will you work with us to make sure that before OBGYN services are taken out of a rural hospital, there has to be a process and procedure?
I'm happy to work with you on that, Senator, meet with you and see if we can work with you on it. I don't know exactly what the issue is.
Well, again, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, who has said he doesn't know how many people died from COVID, doesn't know if the vaccine saved lives, doesn't understand the issue of OBGYN. OBGYN are fleeing rural America because they can't afford it. And with the cuts that are coming up, it's going to be exponentially worse. I would invite you, sir, to come with me to a community health center in Virginia and hear what is on people's mind. They want to get healthier? Absolutely. Count me in. But they also don't want their basic health care removed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Secretary, good to see you again. As I traveled around Oklahoma during August, it was great to be able to be home. I had several folks that contacted me that we had some great meetings with some rural hospitals as well. They're looking forward to the $50 billion for the One Big Beautiful Bill that is targeting towards rural hospitals, starting with $10 billion next year. I know you're quickly getting all the instructions out on that. We know that's in process. It was good to be able to visit with him and be able to talk about that. They're very pleased. Thanks for the work you're doing on that. I also met with some of our groups that do incredible medical research on this. I know the NIH grants were held for a while and being studied. Those have been released, and grateful to be able to see that because there's some amazing medical research happening, including some longitudinal studies. They need those dollars released, so I appreciate y'all getting those released out there. I did hear from a lot of our folks, and I want to talk about one of these issues. From a lot of our hospitals, they immediately raised the issue of Medicare Advantage plans and how they're withholding payments, they're delaying payments back to hospitals, and a problem that's been for rural hospitals. I know y'all are working on that as well. We want to work with you on that. But you and I have spoken on the second issue on that, and it's the pharmacy business.
We'll keep
We
listening.
are going to meet to discuss childhood vaccine recommendations. Parents and physicians depend upon this guidance to make decisions and to keep kids safe. And as I said, I support vaccines. I've been hearing from many of my medical colleagues, people I've known from medical school, residency, and when I practiced medicine in Wyoming, and there are real concerns that safe, proven vaccines like measles, like hepatitis B, and others could be in jeopardy. And that would put Americans at risk and reverse decades of progress. As we've seen over the last 4 years, the previous administration 4 years, when recommendations became politicized or were swayed by bias, that the public trust can be lost. So what safeguards are in place to ensure decisions are based solely on science and not politics And how are you going to make sure doctors and parents can count on CDC guidance?
I mean, Senator, I would point this out. That right now, there's only 10% of children are complying with the CDC's recommendation on COVID boosters. Only 15% of healthcare workers. So Americans have lost faith in CDC, and we need to restore that faith. And we're going to do that by telling the truth and not through propaganda, by making them understand that everything that we say is true. That we're going to tell them what we know, we're going to tell them what we don't know, and we're going to tell them what we're researching and how we're doing it, and we're going to be transparent. It's the only way to restore trust in the agency, by making it trustworthy.
Finally, with chronic diseases like you, I'm committed to addressing our nation's growing rate of chronic diseases. I think if we're going to make America healthy again, we need to support rural primary care providers that play a role as a rural physician. I want to make sure we can prevent and manage chronic diseases in their communities, and I ask for you to continue to work with us specifically with regard to rural health.
Thank you, Congressman.
Senator Daines. Chairman Gribble, thank you. Secretary Kennedy, welcome. It's good to see you here again. I want to begin my time by talking about the issue of federal deregulation of chemical abortion drugs. Since mifepristone was approved in 2000, 25 years ago, the FDA has steadily stripped away safeguards related to this drug, no longer requiring a doctor's prescription, no follow-up visits, no adverse event reporting, and now allowing it to be sent through the mail. Earlier this year, there was a new study that analyzed 865,000 real-world insurance claims, and it found that nearly 11% of women experienced a serious adverse event within 45 days of taking mifepristone. To put that in perspective, that is 22 times higher than the FDA's long-standing estimate of less than 0.5%. While these findings alone are shocking, my conversations with those in the medical profession, credible medical professionals, lead me to believe that even this study may indeed underrepresent the scale of the problem. For years, we've heard the misleading and frankly very harmful lie that's being sold to women that this drug is, and I quote, safe as Tylenol. These lies sadly have real-world consequences. Just last year,
We're going to hop out for just a moment.
In the IRA, were very well intentioned, but they were poorly structured. What we found is that there are actually, the negotiations that have occurred actually have ended up raising the costs for Medicare. We are right now in
The
negotiations.
CBO has not agreed to that. The CBO doesn't say that. It's just the opposite. So you're saying the CBO and independent agencies that validate the costs are wrong?
Well, that is CMS data.
Okay, so let's just focus on the cancer drugs. Why aren't we negotiating those and bringing those down for families? Why does the bill exempt those?
Is part of the MFN negotiations. I'm not sure of that provision in the bill, of One Beautiful Bill, but
You're not sure of the provision, the negotiation provision, and how exempt
for Keytruda.
Your agency is responsible for that negotiation, and you don't know about it?
I know that we're negotiating in the MFN
Let me ask you this, Mr.
negotiations.
Secretary. Let me ask you another question. How much are Medicare Part D enrollees expected to pay for prescription drug coverage next year?
I think that is in debate right now.
Let me tell you.
Are you talking about the?
They are going to pay $15 more than last year, up to $50 a month. Now let me have a question for you on Part B. How much are Medicare Part B premiums expected to increase next year?
I don't know. I talked to.
So that is about, they're supposed to increase about 11.6% or $21.50
more each month. And again, last time you were before me, you couldn't answer the questions of the very agency and the authority that you have to address these issues. You know, next year, seniors and families are facing higher healthcare costs across the board. 23 million people on Medicare with a standalone Part D drug plan could see their premiums rise to $50 a month, up from $35, because the Trump administration is cutting the federal subsidy that has been keeping costs down. Part B premiums will jump 11.6% to $206 a month in 2026, one of the largest single-year increases in decades. And so for an administration that claims it is lowering costs, my question to you is, what are you going to do to keep costs down for seniors?
I mean, I'm already doing what I did. I'm already keeping costs down.
What are you doing to keep costs down for seniors, knowing that these costs are going to be increasing?
I mean, the program integrity bill, that is the first action that I did when I got in. It's one of the earliest actions in history of a complex regulation by an HHS secretary. The Congressional Budget Office has said that that's brought premiums down by 5%. That is the Congressional Budget Office, which does not like to acknowledge anything that we do.
And does that impact seniors?
Excuse me?
Does that impact seniors? And I know my time is running out. Does that impact seniors? What you just talked about, you're lowering costs. I'm asking you specifically.
We're lowering
about
costs.
Seniors. Does it impact seniors?
Does it impact?
Let me just stop you.
I didn't
Time
hear
is
what
running
you
out,
said.
so I appreciate the chairman's indulgence here. My concern is you can't answer the questions. The very agency has oversight over these issues and controls the levers to lower costs for seniors. And you can't answer that simple question.
I didn't hear your question.
Okay, let's go.
We'll just proceed, and Senator Tillis has yielded his position to Senator Blackburn. So
And
she'll take.
thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us today. I appreciate the comments you've made about the Rural Health Transformation Program. That is something many of us worked on, and we were pleased to push that out of this committee, and I know Dr. Oz is moving forward with implementing that. I appreciate your comments to Senator Warner on the area wage index. He and I have worked on fixing that, and we appreciate your attention. I am delighted to know that you're going to end the revolving door and the conflicts of interest. I have found it so unseemly that people who work with a pharmaceutical or with a big food company then go back over into CDC or NIH or FDA, and then they're signing off on regulation for their former employer and many times their future employer. So we appreciate that. Senator Langford went to you on the PBMs, and as you are aware, my PBM Act that Senator Wyden worked with me on, that made it out of this committee last cycle. And making certain that we keep these rural pharmacies open, making certain that PBMs do not profit above what is their standard service fee, and that they have to disclose all their pricing. That is going to be an imperative. So will you work with us to get that PBM legislation across the finish line and to the president's desk?
Yes, Senator, absolutely.
Thank you. Interoperability is something that you have announced, a new interoperability framework to better align data sharing principles. And this is important to digital health. And as you're aware, when we passed 21st Century Cures in 2018, the Software Act and that health IT definition is something that I worked tirelessly on to get implemented. So what I want to hear from you is, how does CMS plan to align this new framework with the existing federal framework, and how are we going to be able to move forward with one national policy on interoperability?
Well, I don't know if we, what we have right now is concrete commitments from the 60 top tech companies who we were able to convene to do data sharing, to do patient accessibility, and to do interoperability. But I can't tell you how that's going to mesh.
Then if you will have someone submit to me in writing what that pathway is, this is something that is essential if we're going to be able to benefit from that data. So having some specificity on the pathway will be helpful. I did want to talk with you. Last time you were here, I talked about the concerns on overprescribing prescription stimulant drugs for children, and there are ways that HHS can work collaboratively with state agencies on this and to actually promote more community-based intervention to combat overprescribing. And we all have seen the harmful side effects, and there's a lot of reporting out there on this and tremendous concern for grandmamas like me who see children and friends of our grandchildren who suffer with this. So I know your team is working on solutions, so you're going to have your Make Our Children Healthy Again strategy that you're going to release. But talk for a moment, we've got 30 seconds left, talk for a moment on how you can better arm parents with information on the harmful side effects of overprescribing these stimulant drugs.
I mean, one of the problems, Senator, is that, you know, we now have 1 out of every 5 kids on these drugs and the antidepressants, even more. And we know very little about the long-term impacts because NIH and CDC have been asleep at the wheel. Right now, we are doing those studies. We're doing extensive studies so that we can warn parents and so that we can force the companies to put labels on their products. And, you know, we'll do whatever we can to show that, just to get data out to the public. That's really what our function is. And to show what the long-term impact of some of these drugs is. You know, are we actually preventing suicide or are we creating more suicide? And that's something that we don't know the answer to, which is, you know, how did these drugs become so common in our society without us even knowing the answer to those questions? That is malpractice at these agencies, and that is the malpractice that I am going to fix.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Warren.
In cases where you've said that, I'd just like to see the scientific evidence to substantiate that. I'm going to stipulate that you were honest and you had research behind it. We'll go back and figure out what scientific studies you believe are founded on lies and not scientifically viable. And then finally, I just want to give you an opportunity. Apparently in the exchange with Senator Bennett, you said you agreed with Dr. Levy's statements, who said that the mRNA vaccine causes serious harm, including death, particularly in young people. They said you agreed with that comment. Did you agree with that comment or not?
I think that's true, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tillis. We now have Senator Smith. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Kennedy, I have sat here for the last many minutes and listened carefully to your testimony. And I think actually Senator Tillis laid out so many of the ways that what you have said has contradicted yourself and others. It's, I mean, I don't even know where to start. So I'm going to start here. Over the last 8 months, you have claimed to make America healthy again, but in actual fact, you have led the charge in the Trump administration to destroy what is best in our healthcare system. And your denials and your evasion and your lies here do not change that. You are the Secretary of the Health and Human Services, yet you're trafficking in these fringe idea and discredited theories that are completely out of step with the scientific consensus. And you seem to be willing to say anything in the moment, even if it's untrue. So last time you were before Congress, Secretary Kennedy, you claimed, and I quote, "I have never been anti-vax. I have never told the public to avoid a vaccination." But in a podcast, you said the opposite. You said there's no vaccine that is safe and effective. So that sure sounds anti-vax to me, Secretary Kennedy. So let me ask you, when were you lying, sir? When you told this committee that you were not anti-vax, or when you told Americans that there's no safe and effective vaccine?
Both things are true.
Oh, so more denial, more back and forth. I mean, here's what I know. Here's what I know.
Let me explain why, Senator. You just
No, actually, I want you to listen to me.
Okay, go ahead.
I want you to listen to me, because I've been listening to you. You said that ACIP is an independent panel after you stocked it with your picks. You said that you want evidence-based science, but it seems that what you mean is evidence that supports your view, not the scientific consensus. I mean, you dared to sit there and call my colleague from New Hampshire a liar when she presented you with facts that don't support your view of the world. It's incredible. But let me move on. Just last week, in the days after the tragic shooting at Annunciation Catholic School in my home state of Minnesota, you went on Fox News blaming school shootings on antidepressants. You have no evidence of that because you have no evidence of a connection. And you want to talk about...
You're just saying something. You're just making stuff up.
You know, this is what you say, right? Secretary Kennedy, when someone presents you with information that does not fit...
I did not blame that shooting. I have no idea whether... I have no idea, and I never said that. You're making it up. You're twisting. Yeah, you are.
Secretary
you are being
Kennedy,
dishonest right
now. If you want to talk about mental health and gun violence in this country... If you want to talk about mental health and gun violence in this country, we should be talking about that, because that's what the parents of Annunciation School...
You don't want to talk. You want to harangue, and you want to you want to have partisan politics. I want to actually solve these problems.
Secretary Kennedy, what the Trump administration is doing right now is making it harder for people in this country to get access to mental health care. So don't talk to me about solving the mental health care crisis when you are making it harder. You cut Medicaid, which is the #1 payer for mental health care services in this country. You decimated the agency at Health and Human Services that focuses on mental health and substance abuse. That's what states count on. They're cutting their services to schools as a result of that. Several years ago, in a bipartisan way, Congress came together and passed the Safer Communities Act, which made important investments in mental health care and did some important, though small things, to reduce access to guns. What do? You propose cutting that funding. This is what we're talking about in your leadership in the Department of Health and Human Services. If you want radical transparency, as you talk about, I mean, take a look at what you are doing. And, you know, I've heard a lot about MAHA today while we've been here. There's a lot of Americans, Secretary Kennedy, who trust you, who believe what you say, especially when you say you're standing up to corruption. And I think that they need to know, you apparently have a lot of influence with President Trump. Did you ask him not to roll back these regulations that are stopping the big corporations from dumping heavy metals and endocrine disruptors into our soil and water? I mean, there's no evidence that you have been even opposing that. Did you do anything to stop the Trump administration from rolling back this handout to Big Pharma that makes it easier for the big drug companies to charge more for cancer drugs? No, you presided over that. I mean, it's stunning, really, what's happened over the last 8 months. It's stunning to me. And I just hope that in this moment, our colleagues, there's hardly anybody left in this room, are going to think about what it is that you've done, what your legacy is going to be at the Health and Human Services Agency, and pay attention to the damage that is being done here.
Senator Marshall.